reason why we can't have the audio on in the video is because there was just too much noise being made by the other tradesmen at the work site. But right now I'm just cutting a couple of pieces of plywood just to use one or two of them behind the repair patch that I'm going to show you how to do. Now on other videos I have shown you how to do a blowout patch. This is different. We're not using the paper on the sheetrock to do the repair. In this frame, there is the opening. It happened to be about 7 inches by 7 inches, almost exactly. And what I'm showing you is coarse thread sheetrock screws. I'm going to use about 4 of them. And what I'm doing is I'm going to now put the plywood up behind the hole, securing it as you see me doing on either side of that opening. Now I tried to put another one in, but there's something in the way up there. So here's what I did. I just moved it over diagonal, and that will give us a sufficient brace against which the sheetrock repair piece can rest and spend the rest of its life, so to speak. What I'm doing here now is measuring my opening to put a piece of sheetrock in that opening. And so I'm going to now just cut it as I found a piece of sheetrock at the job site. And it's just a basic cut, as you see me doing here. If it's just a small piece, you can do it without using a square. You just have to be pretty straight with the cut, but it doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to wind up filling it in. What I'm using here are 2-inch coarse thread screws. As you saw earlier, I secured the piece of plywood to the sheetrock itself by screwing through the sheetrock into the wood. And now I'm using 2-inch coarse thread screws to attach my piece of sheetrock to that diagonal piece of plywood that I installed. And what I'm doing here will keep that sheetrock in place very nicely. Is mixing 5-minute mud. We want to get this done quickly. And so the 5-minute mud doesn't cure any quicker than the other, but what it does do is that it gets hard immediately, allowing you to recoat it within 15-20 minutes, even sooner than that. Okay, so that's why I'm using the 5-minute mud. It's just a mixture of the powder and some water. Just read the directions on the back. And so here I go, putting the compound onto the repair. My repair was a little inside of the ceiling, so I had to build it out a bit, and that's what I'm doing here. The type of tape that you use to do this repair is very important. Would you use this one, or would you use the fiberglass mesh tape in my right hand? Well, if you said fiberglass, you're right. Why is that? The paper tape will build out the repair and leave a hump. The fiberglass mesh tape has a bunch of holes in it, and the compound can get in between those holes and behind it. That's your best bet. You can see here how the fiberglass mesh tape is so thin. The paper tape is too big, and you'd see it on a ceiling. You see how nice and thin this is? And the joint compound just goes right in those little holes, gets behind them, and the repair stays thin. What I was explaining, and when you see me in the video talking, this is what I was explaining. My repair patch was not flush with the rest of the ceiling. It was at least 1/8 of an inch in. And so I had to build that up to meet the sheetrock and then build it out. Not only build it up, filling it in, but building it out. What you see me doing here is notice that half of my blade is passing over the repair patch, while the other half of the blade is using the outskirts of the repair to give me the guide on the patch side of the blade to tell the blade how much compound to put into the repair area. You see, if I just keep passing over the middle, whether it be straight across or diagonal, and this is what I'm explaining in the video right now, I'm just going to keep pushing compound in and pushing compound out. And what you'll see when it dries is a hump on each of the 4 corners of the repair. So, let me explain it a little better. We know we have to build up the middle. Well, how do you do that? You get a wide blade and you let half of the blade hang over the repair, while the other half of the blade is using the rest of the ceiling and its depth to tell the repair side of the blade how much compound should go in it. If you used a smaller blade like a 6-inch, oh, there'd be a lot of guesswork there. The wider you use of the blade, in this case, the better it's going to be. And so when you see the final finish on this repair, you'll understand what I did. Use the outside of your repair, and we do this even with small holes on a wall. You never want to use a little spackle knife. I see YouTube videos where professionals are using a 2-inch spackle knife. Let me tell you something. First of all, if you're moving quickly with your hand, it takes a lot of time to stop and get the plaster or the joint compound in the right area with that little 1-inch or 2-inch spackle knife. Your best bet is to use one that's minimally 3 inches. 4 is better, so that you can move quickly. And then you're filling in the hole. If your hole is 1 inch, you want to have at least 1 inch on each side of the hole, so that the piece of the blade that's outside of the hole can simply guide how much compound is going to go into the repair area. And I hope I didn't over-explain it. I want everybody to benefit from these videos, and this is something that you only figure out when you're doing this kind of work. And the do-it-yourselfer goes on YouTube, tries to figure out how to do it, and the person that's giving the video doesn't explain this very important detail. So the moral of the story is get yourself a wide blade when you're having a small repair, because the bigger the blade, the better your repair is going to look. Screed. In this part of the video, I'm going to use this piece of wood
and I'm going to
as a
use it just
screed.
to shave down the
All
high
I'm going
spots.
to do is use it to knock down the high points. You see how it goes way beyond the repair? Well, that's what you want. And all I'm doing is going back and forth just to take off what's protruding down from the ceiling. And by doing this, I make it nice and flat. All I have to do now is put another coat on, wait till it dries, give it a little sanding, and then we're ready to prime and paint.
Pretty good. Now I'll just mix another 5-minute batch. And now the whole surface is level, and in a half an hour I'll go over it with ready mix right out of the bucket, be done with it.
Well, here I'm using the 18-inch roller to lay out the paint. What you really want to do when you do a patch with joint compound, especially if it's this powder mix that you're doing it right there at the job, you want to give it a heavy, thick coat of primer. And give it 2 passes. Don't just do it once. Do it twice so that it soaks into the joint compound. Again, there was just too much noise going on in the background to subject you to it. So I will explain what I'm using here. This is PVA primer, PVA. And it's only good if you're going to paint over it. If you're going to put wallpaper over it, don't use PVA primer. This does a decent job in covering the sheetrock and the new joint compound to seal it up in order to receive paint. And so what I'm doing here is I'm explaining that you have to roll over each surface 4 times. Up and down is 1 time. Up and down is 2 times, and so on and so forth. You have to go over each column 4 times in order to mash that paint into the fibers of the new sheetrock and get it to bond with the joint compound. Okay, don't just roll it on and give it one pass. Push that material into this new sheetrock so that you have a very good adhesion when it dries. It's the only way to ensure a rich, thick coat underneath the paint. I picked up this Milwaukee light here for construction sites. It's 2,500 lumens. I got a good deal on it. The light itself was $150, but I got 2 batteries plus the charger that was still on a holiday sale for another $150. It's well worth it. It's a very durable light. Put your name on it if you get one. Take it with you at the end of the day. Here's the light. This is a very good construction. This is aluminum. I highly recommend it. Okay, let's get the painting soon.